Hi, this is Professor Innes again, and you're now on the module to do with Plato's realism. It's called realism in your book. Often it's referred to as notion of forms. So, going back to the beginning here, you approached in the introduction this discussion of ontology. We did lots of other discussions of metaphysics, such as the discussion of free will, personal identity, and causation. All of those are properties of, or concerns of the metaphysician, because they deal with something which is intangible, but us human beings nonetheless consider that this intangible thing is of great importance, is needed to understand the world of particulars. So in order for me to understand mammals, for example, I've got to understand the essential characteristics of what it is to be a mammal. Therefore, with that universal, I can then understand those particulars. So I can now understand what makes up a human being with those essential characteristics as a mammal, just as what makes up the whale or the dolphin, or whichever mammal you can think of. So here, with this, you're dealing with, again, it's called ontology. It's that discussion and inquiry into the notion of being and the nature of being, how things exist. Here you're looking at categories, and here you're looking at things which are put into categories. Now, we say to ourselves as philosophers that we do categorize. That's the point we have to make. There's no big deal about the fact we do categorize, or things are categorized. I don't want to at this stage say who's doing the categorizing, because that's part of the controversy. But things are categorized. So as we mentioned, there is the mammal. We know that chairs and armchairs and deck chairs and such types of chairs are categorized. They belong to the same group, apparently. And we put them into those groups because they have the essential characteristics which make them a member of that group. So, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. The philosopher says there's no big deal here. These things are in categories. It's as simple as that. The problem is, where do these categorizations, or namely, where do these universals reside? Is it the case this categorization is done independent of us, as Plato is going to argue, or with Locke, it's a concept of the mind? We're going to have to keep in mind Locke will not necessarily say this is a free-for-all choice of what we believe should be in this category. There's still reason to be used to say what is included and what is not. But nonetheless, the case is, the problem is, where do they reside? If in this course we would go on to people like Wittgenstein, which we're not doing, we would dismiss these universals altogether. You are doing Berkeley, and he will question these universals and say they're just part of the language. Somehow we've had this mental abstraction of a universal, and we're somewhat kidding ourselves to believe they exist. That's George Berkeley. You'll get to him in a couple of weeks' time. But at the moment, we're going to be rather optimistic with Plato and say that these universals, they exist, and they exist independent of you. There's nothing you can do about it. That will be your discussion for this particular module. Right, so hopefully that made sense. So what you're dealing here with universals for the next 3 weeks with Plato, Locke and Berkeley is that discussion of universals and where they reside. Universals are problematic for a philosopher, and again, as we said, they're problematic because they're intangible. We can't touch them, experiment upon them, but they're needed to understand the world of particulars. So that's, as long as that's understood and you have it in your mind that these universals are problematic, then it'll be plain sailing for the next 3 weeks. You'll have a full understanding of these universals, where they reside, and how we're supposed to view them. Okay, so with that in mind, that understood, we'll now go on to Plato for 2 or 3 minutes. So, this is Plato's view of forms. They're very controversial. It's not the case we're going to agree with them or disagree with them. We're going to see whether or not they work. That's not to say that I disagree with Plato or that I'm going to go forward and agree with Locke. I am looking at this argument to see if it works. I might, at the end of the day, prefer Plato than Locke. Doesn't mean to say that Plato is right and Locke is wrong. It just means I'm going to prefer his argument. But still, preference needs some proof, and therefore I'm going to have to inquire into Plato's argument of forms and see how it works. Does it work? So what Plato says is that universals exist as independent realities. By that, it means that on this planet Earth, as we may use to illustrate this argument, we have no real forms. We have, on planet Earth, this notion of flux, that things are constantly changing. But independent of us are the real thing. So therefore, an independent reality will show the essential characteristics of a chair. The independent reality will show the independent notion of justice. Excuse me. So no matter what it is, whether it's a straightforward everyday item or something complex like the notion of justice, it is the case that the real thing exists independent of us. It is for us to use our intelligence to find this real thing. Now, whether or not we have this intelligence or courage is another matter. The thing would be that that's how the universal will be found. Therefore, that's how we're going to find the essential characteristics of that given universal, whether it's justice, the chair, motor vehicles, what's the essential characteristic of a motor vehicle, and so forth and so on, or a good motor vehicle. So they exist independent of us, and regardless of our feelings, our wants, our desires, we have to accept that if we do go upon this investigation and we find that the essential characteristics of a certain thing are disagreeable to us, then that's a bit tough. It's the case we have to accept that which is true. Therefore, the truth would be, as I put down in the blurb starting this introduction, about Boise State University. Now, if we go about our investigation and find out that Boise State football team is not a very good football team, then we're going to have to accept that. That's our reality. We'll have to change our relationship to this football team. Instead of saying they're a great football team, we're going to have to say they're a likable football team. I like them. I like to go and watch them and support them. But unfortunately, after my investigation, it is more than likely that they're not a very good football team. There's no evidence, and I'm living in the past, and I should forget about the Fiesta Bowl victory of 2007 or 2006, whichever it was, and stop living in some dream world. So that would be the investigation there. So it could be very, very difficult, and as you're going to watch with the video, you have this video you're going to watch, and it's on the allegory of the cave. You're going to notice it's going to be difficult for people to be pushed out into the open light and experience reality as it is. And reality can be shocking. In that sense, you could be temporarily hurt, made uncomfortable. As the light hits the eyes, as the analogy goes, the eyes hurt. As you come to realize that the Boise State football team is not a very good football team, your feelings are hurt, or whatever it is hurt when you realize the football team isn't as good as you think it is. So it's going to be difficult. But nonetheless, if you're going to be enlightened, you have got to go through this process. You have got to give up these prejudices, these peculiar beliefs, these desires, which are not true. So that's Platonic realism for us. And again, like I said, it's not going to be easy for us to take knowledge and accept knowledge. We have to accept reality as it is, as far as Plato is concerned. Now, with the notion of flux as mentioned, we've understood here that there is this independent reality. That independent reality is represented in the cave as being outside the cave. Now, there's a sense of understanding which is based in the cave, which is the false belief. This is the word of flux, change, alteration. alteration and change occurs at all times. It's happening right now. As far as this course is concerned, it's going to be a different course by the time you finished it than when it started, especially because it's the first time it's been taught. In that sense, there has been change. This is not the ideal course it should be, and the ideal course will come along in a year or two, possibly, maybe. I don't know if that's going to be the case, considering Plato's argument that perfection is very difficult to come by. So we say to ourselves, maybe it could come along in a few years. But nonetheless, at the moment, it's going through a process of flux and change. Now, in the cave, there's this flux and change, but the emphasis would be on the coherence of the person's knowledge. They see shadows, they hear echoes, they relate the shadows to the echoes and believe that the shadows are making the noises given by the echoes. But that cause and effect relationship is wrong. They have not done their homework. So, in that respect, what we've got in the cave is this false view. This is the world of flux. It is trying to, I presume, have this ideal representation of reality, but they're not capable in the cave of seeing reality. Therefore, they've got to get out of that cave. Will they get out of the cave? I'll let you think about that. Is it possible they can be taken out of the cave? Here, the cave dwellers in modern day life could be represented by politicians. They could be represented by people who excessively play video games. So I've been told that an hour of video games every day is healthy. It's when you get into 3, 4, 5 plus hours a day, then you're a cave dweller. Unfortunately, that's the analysis here. So lots of everyday representation, everyday examples of cave dwellers. Again, we've mentioned quite a few of these examples. So there are two worlds: the world of flux, that's the cave dwellers, and the world of reality, those people who live outside the cave. So it's a good illustration. So hopefully with this, we've got an understanding of Plato's notion of forms. They exist independent of us. They're a reality we have got to accept. The person with intelligence and moral fortitude will accept these realities. They have to. That's the truth. Whether or not they like it is another thing. They have got to accept it. So that is basically Plato's notion of forms. Now, I hope this has made sense. This is complex. It's not difficult. It's just complex. One has got to see Plato's argument without getting too distracted by his possible problems. The possible problems will be, how do we have two senses of reality? One which is in the cave and one outside the cave. I can see that as being quite acceptable, but philosophically it's a contradiction. We can't have two at the same time. That is a problem. So think about it in that sense. And this notion of reality, did Plato point it out for us? I don't think so. Just because it sounds like a good idea doesn't mean to say it's so. So in that respect, does this independent reality exist? As Aristotle said after Plato, this is a great treasure trove of ideas, but please tell me where it is, because I want to find it. Plato didn't tell us where this treasure trove of ideas is sitting for us to find, so we might as well say it doesn't exist. We might as well. Okay, so there are faults with this argument. So keep that in mind as you go through it. Okay, so I've talked for far too long. With these videos, you can split them up, refer to them constantly if you wish. They're supposed to be good direction for you for the module. So hopefully the reading goes well and you participate in the group discussion and do the reading, of course. So I'll see you online, so have a nice week. Thanks, bye.